Group Session 7, Seeking a Secure Attachment. Quote, because children grow up, we think a child's purpose is to grow up, but a child's purpose is to be a child. End quote. Tom Stoppard. Quote, I hate it when someone gives me a compliment. End quote. Sally. Attachment theory may sound terribly academic, but this theory explores some of the most vital features of human development and has direct implications for those who experienced childhood harm. In fact, much of what it describes is so fundamental that it not only applies to human beings, but to mammals that care for their offspring. This material has been quite eye-opening for many people we have worked with. A word of encouragement for those who are parents. For people using this program who are parents themselves, it isn't easy to read this chapter without reflecting on their role as a parent. For many people who experienced childhood harm, parenting is very important, often because they feel a need to provide for their children what was missing in their development. However, it's not unusual for these individuals to be self-critical concerning their role as a parent. They often know what it feels like to have a parent who didn't keep them safe or caused harm, so they can be very sensitive to making parental mistakes. It's important to point out that all a child needs is to be fundamentally safe and loved. Beyond that, parents can make many mistakes and still provide good enough parenting. Some recognize that the complex trauma they experienced made being a parent more challenging. For example, some people we work with can feel conflicted about providing normal boundaries or discipline to their children. Others may experience complex feelings concerning physical intimacy with their children, especially if they experienced abuse or never received safe physical intimacy themselves. For these individuals, reading this chapter may trigger difficult thoughts or feelings about how they have coped with their role as a parent. If you feel you have struggled with your role as a parent in any way, we encourage you to look at this psychologically and with self compassion rather than through any lens of self blame. Also, remind yourself that you are engaging in a challenging model of help to support your personal development, which you deserve credit for. Attachment theory. It is essential that a child has a relationship with a carer that is characterized by enduring safety and care. This is the main idea behind attachment theory, and as obvious as this sounds, there are some very significant findings which come from this area of study. Let's have a brief definition of attachment, and then we will get into the helpful detail of what this theory is all about. The attachment between two human beings refers to the quality of the emotional bond. In a secure attachment, there are experiences of safety, warmth, and trust. To say an attachment is just an academic way of saying a relationship. So if we refer to a secure attachment, we just mean a secure relationship. Attachment is often considered with respect to the bond between a carer and an infant or child. However, as we will see, attachment is an essential human experience throughout life, and the quality of attachment you experienced in infancy and childhood tends to impact the experience of attachments in adulthood. Attachment theory is not a perfect science, and while the ideas can appear clear cut on paper, for some it can seem messier when you apply them to your experiences. Despite the scrappiness of this theory, it really does try to get at important aspects of child development and adult well being. At any rate, the way in which you identify to these ideas that you will find here is what really matters. As you read, try and connect your childhood and adult experiences to the ideas you encounter. See what memories you can manage to work with. Attachment theory was developed in the 1950s by British psychiatrist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby. Before Bowlby, there was a prevalent view that human development was driven by feeding experiences or a child's inner fantasy life. Today, these ideas seem out of date, and most people naturally assume that the developing bond between a caregiver and a child is far more important for healthy development. No one deserves more credit for this shift in thinking than Bowlby, and his theory has had a profound influence on hospital visitation to children, the shift away from orphanages to foster care, the need to support young mothers suffering from mental health problems, and how therapy is provided. Attachment theory indicates that the infant and child have an instinctual need to bond with or attach to a caregiver. This instinct to attach to a caregiver is based on the biological need for survival. The infant and child will naturally express attachment behavior, which is any behavior designed to form a bond with a caregiver. Infants and young children monitor adults and experiment with strategies to stay close to or attached to a carer. The form that attachment behavior takes can depend on the age of development. A newborn will cry and stretch out their arms. A 6-month-old will cling onto a carer or smile in delight. A 1 year old may hold a carer's leg or express a wish to be picked up. A 2 year old may want to hold a hand or cry. As a child begins to move about independently, they may bring the carer something to show them. Attachment behavior is about staying in close physical proximity to the carer. This inborn need for a secure attachment is so basic that it's thought to be shared with other mammals. A chimpanzee and a human baby will cling to their mother in a remarkably similar way. A puppy will follow its owner all over the house to stay in close proximity. Ducklings ride on mom's back or swim behind her in an orderly queue when they get too big. What a mammal infant will not do is allow a caregiver to get too far away from them. The mammalian brain evolved in layers. The first and innermost layer to develop is sometimes called the reptilian brain because it performs the most basic functions for survival, functions we still share with reptiles. Later formations of mammalian brain development underlie our essential need for contact and care from those within our species. Vessel van der Kolk makes an amusing point which illustrates this finding. He points out that any trip to your local pet shop will vividly depict the difference between the reptilian and the mammalian brain. Reptiles will happily exist alone in their glass enclosure, focusing on hunger and body temperature. A group of hamsters will typically play with one another and explore until they get tired, and then they will all form into a big furry pile and rest or sleep. The mammalian brain is wired for connection. A secure attachment to a caring adult provides the child with what is referred to as a safe base. If the child feels secure within the attachment, then they will have the confidence to venture away from the safe base, knowing they can return if they are frightened or confused. This means a child can explore the world, experiment, play spontaneously, and take healthy risks. If something gets scary, they can run or crawl back to the secure base, confident that the carer will soothe their distress or explain something. Having a safe base within a secure attachment will support the development of independence, self confidence, and exploration. Those experiencing childhood harm often didn't have a safe base through a secure attachment. They may have formed some attachment to a carer, but it is referred to as an insecure attachment. As adults, they can find it much more difficult to take healthy risks, expose themselves to new experiences, and tolerate disappointments. Or because they expect harm or disaster, some may just act recklessly or place themselves in vulnerable situations. Why not take senseless risks if you're just going to get hurt in any event. Without the consistent experience of a safe base in childhood, your experience can narrow through avoidance or the danger may continue. There are thought to be three different styles of insecure attachment, which we will look at in a moment. However, to keep things simple, let's first summarize some of the main differences between a secure attachment and an insecure attachment, which forms in childhood. As you read through Chart 1, you may wish to highlight or circle what seems relevant for you. The word child covers birth to 18. Please pause the audio and review Chart 1 and then complete Exercise 1 in the guidebook. Enter Mary Ainsworth and attachment styles. While we can consider attachment in terms of secure and insecure, as in Chart 1, a colleague of John Bowlby's named Mary Ainsworth illuminated three different insecure attachment styles. Ainsworth discovered these insecure attachment styles through an ingenious experiment run during the 1970s called the strange situation. Where Bowlby was the theoretician, Ainsworth was the exacting scientist who wanted to get to the detail of how secure and insecure attachment styles actually work. The strange situation experiment involved a room with various toys and a one-way mirror the experimenters could look through. A mother and her 12 to 18-month-old child are shown into the room by an experimenter who leaves after about 1 minute. For 3-minute periods, the child has different experiences. The mother is left alone with the child. A stranger then joins them. The mother leaves the child with the stranger. The mother returns and the stranger leaves. The mother leaves and the infant is left alone. The stranger returns. The mother returns and the stranger leaves. This experiment will have caused some anxiety for the child, and we are sorry if this is upsetting for some readers. From Ainsworth's perspective, causing some anxiety in the child was necessary to understand the quality of the attachment between child and mother. The experimenters were interested in observing the child's reaction to the above events in various ways. Was the child able to use the mother as a safe base to explore the room and toys? Was the child distressed when the mother left? Did the child search for their missing mother? Did the child seek comfort when the mother returned? Was the child comforted by the mother, or did they resist the mother's efforts to comfort? Through her experimentation, Ainsworth identified 4 attachment styles in children: secure, anxious or ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. You will have an opportunity to explore these styles in a moment, but we need to make a couple of general points. Recall that a child has an instinctual need to form an attachment to a carer, and they will try different strategies to achieve some form of attachment. You may not remember how you went about this as an infant and young child, but you will have made attempts. The style of attachment you will have been able to form is thought to largely result from the carer's response to you. In order to form a secure attachment, you needed to have at least one person who could consistently understand and respond to your needs and who you felt safe with. If this did not occur, you may well have developed an insecure attachment style. If these attachment styles were only present during childhood, this information would be less relevant. However, the attachment style you developed in childhood to primary carers tends to endure and show up within adult relationships. In other words, the style of attachment you were able to develop with a carer as an infant and child will color the quality of attachments you tend to form within your adult relationships. So, when we are discussing the different attachment styles, You can consider both your attachment to carers, i.e., parents or others, and adult relationships. As you read about the attachment styles below, see what you can connect with. Accessing memories and some creative reflection may be useful. Bowlby originally felt that an infant and child would only bond with one attachment figure, typically the mother, and Ainsworth experimented with mother and child bonds. However, later research suggests that fathers can be important attachment figures, as can other individuals acting in a nurturing role. You may have had more than one carer that was relevant as a child, and the attachments may have been quite different. For some, an attachment to one caregiver may have helped to reduce the harm experienced with other carers. The section below looks at how attachment can develop in childhood, and later we will draw out how this can manifest in adult relationships. Attachment styles. Secure attachment style. For a secure attachment to develop, the child will have largely felt safe with a caregiver. The caregiver will have understood their own emotions and been largely emotionally stable, and they will have been able to tune in accurately to what their child is feeling and needing. They will have been responsive to the child's feelings and needs. The child experiences the carer as a safe base from which they can explore, knowing they can return and be soothed by their care if something goes wrong. The child is learning through experience that people can be trusted to understand and meet needs. The child is encouraged to develop a positive sense of self and will largely see others in a positive light. No parent gets it right all the time, and every parent can have bad days. The quality of time spent with the child may be more important than the amount of time. In the strange situation experiment, children who were securely attached to their mothers felt distressed when their mothers left the room, avoided the stranger when the mother was not present, but were friendly with the stranger when the mother was, and were positive and happy when the mother returned. If upset, the child could seek and be comforted by the mother. Anxious or ambivalent attachment style. The infant or child who develops an anxious attachment style will often not know what to expect from a carer. The carer may have been quite unstable, sometimes involved or connected with the child, but other times insensitive or unavailable. Affection or attention may alternate with abuse or neglect. The child wants an attachment, but also fears an attachment. The key here is inconsistency and instability on the part of the carer. The child may feel needy and dependent on the caregiver, but also fearful or angry towards them. This attachment style is sometimes referred to as ambivalent. The word ambivalent means to have contradictory or conflicted feelings. This captures how the child's neediness for an attachment is mixed with fear of rejection and abandonment. The child is insecure and develops a largely negative view of self, imagining that others will reject or abandon them because they are inadequate. The child can have a positive view of others, perhaps even seeing them as a savior or remedy. In the strange situation experiment, children thought to have an ambivalent attachment show intense distress when the mother leaves the room. They are fearful of the stranger. Approach the mother when she returns, but may push her away. The child explores the room less and cries more. Avoidant attachment style. The infant and child may have experienced more consistent neglect, rejection, or abuse concerning a caregiver. The caregiver may have been unavailable, abusive, or preoccupied with their needs or problems. The child will have wanted a safe attachment, but at some point they decide that ignoring their own needs and feelings and not trusting in others might be the best strategy. The developing child will learn that they must be independent of attachment figures and that relying on others will be a disappointing or harmful experience. The key here is consistency, but it's a fairly consistent lack of safety or nurturance. Ironically, the child may develop positive aspects of self, but it will be based on notions of independence, self reliance, or certain personal skills. In a strange situation experiment, children with an avoidant attachment style show little distress when the mother leaves the room, are okay being alone with the stranger, play normally with the stranger present, and show little interest in the mother when she returns. If the child accepts any comforting when distressed, they are equally likely to accept it from the mother as the stranger. Disorganized attachment style. Mary Ainsworth initially identified the first three styles indicated above. However, as numerous trials of the strange situation experiment continued, she identified a fourth, disorganized attachment style. Mary Ainsworth initially identified the first three styles indicated above. However, as numerous trials of the strange situation experiment continued, she identified a fourth, the disorganized attachment style. The abuse and neglect these children experienced were thought to have been severe and consistent to the point where they were left dazed or confused, with little strategy for attempting an attachment. The adult's behavior was likely very erratic, but consistently negative, alternatively abusive, distant, intrusive, or controlling. The child can experience dissociation, anger, distress, or passivity. Their experience of themselves is very negative, and they are fearful of others, who they also see as negative or harmful. This is why it's sometimes called the fearful attachment style. At least with the anxious and avoidant styles, the child is developing some strategies for dealing with their experiences. With the disorganized style, the child is simply overwhelmed and confused. They can't seem to discover any strategy for attachment or control within their relationships. We mentioned that the attachment style which forms in childhood tends to endure into adulthood and shows up within adult relationships. How does this happen? Bowlby said that through childhood experiences, a child develops an internal working model to help them achieve a sense of security and control within their relationships. The internal working model is like a story people keep telling themselves about relationships. You can sometimes hear the voice of the internal working model in the way people describe themselves and their relationships. Alice experienced consistent neglect and emotional abuse and was placed into foster care at 13. She had one friend who she spoke with about twice a month, though that relationship wasn't that close. Ironically, Alice worked as a human resources officer, but she had developed what we saw as an avoidant attachment style. You can get a sense of her internal working model as concerns others through her words. Quote, I don't like people. I have so little tolerance for all the bullshit and stupidity. You can't rely on anyone. End quote. Daniel was raised by a single mother who was emotionally unstable, sometimes loving and attentive, but other times absent or rejecting. He had a series of childhood illnesses and would intermittently spend weeks in a hospital, separated from all his family. He was a military veteran who now worked as an ambulance driver. Daniel loved his wife intensely, but often imagined she was having an affair. And when she went out of town for her work, he became desperate and would call and text several times a day. He struggled with low self esteem and could feel a sense of emptiness and desperation, often when alone. His childhood experiences would predict an anxious attachment style, which we saw. His words also express an internal working model about himself and others. Quote, I'm such an idiot and I hate acting the way I do with Karen, his wife, and I know I'm messing everything up. I really love her, but I just keep thinking she is going to leave me in the end. End quote. Jerry was a young man who experienced frequent and extreme physical and emotional abuse from his father, who was his main caregiver. With a complete absence of any safety in childhood, he presented with a disorganized attachment style. He appears frightened, confused, and sometimes dissociated within our sessions, and he can't remember much of his childhood. His only social connections are through gaming sites, and he has been unemployed for 5 years. His spaniel is literally the only thing he seems to trust. He has little strategy for attaching, reflecting how overwhelmed he was as a child. His words also give clues to his internal working model concerning self concept and how he sees others. Quote, I don't want to be alone, but I can't cope with people. I want to have friends, but I get paranoid that people hate me, and then I leave a gaming site. I've left 3 sites now. End quote. As you read through Chart 2, see what you can connect with. You may identify clearly with a particular style, or it may not feel that simple. Please pause the audio and review Chart 2. Below is a brief summary of the main points concerning attachment theory. 1. The infant or child has an instinctual need to form an attachment with a carer to ensure survival. 2. A secure or insecure attachment will form as a response to the carer's sensitivity and care for the child. A secure attachment is considered, well, a secure attachment style. Anxious, avoidant, and disorganized styles are considered insecure attachment styles. 3. A secure attachment provides a safe base from which a child can explore, experiment, and play, knowing that they can receive comfort and reassurance if they become distressed. Insecure attachments do not provide a safe base, which can limit exploration and the development of confidence. 4. The development of attachment style in childhood tends to endure into adulthood and adult relationships. This occurs due to the internal working model the individual forms during childhood. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 2 in the guidebook. How might attachment theory help you? If attachment theory were merely a set of ideas, it wouldn't have much use. However, this theory can directly support personal development in a couple of ways. First, a deep appreciation of how adverse childhood experiences led to an insecure attachment style and related relationship difficulties can allow you to be more compassionate with yourself. A child will have developed an attachment style as a way of trying to stay safe and feel some control within relationships. At the time, it made sense for a child to orientate themselves to carers in an avoidant, anxious, or ambivalent, or disorganized fashion. If you can appreciate that the attachment style which developed in childhood can rear its head in unhelpful ways within adult relationships, it's important to be compassionate with yourself. The 3 insecure attachment styles have unique expressions and challenges, but they all share something in common: a difficulty trusting that you are safe in relationships. This is an understandable consequence of childhood abuse, neglect, or abandonment. If your lack of trust expresses itself through an insecure attachment style, you are not failing. You may sense that you need to find ways of developing more secure attachments, but it's important to understand and work on relationship difficulties, not to punish yourself for them. An insecure attachment style develops over many years at the most vulnerable time in a person's development. So it's important to be patient with yourself. An insecure attachment style won't shift without a struggle. Second, if you can identify with an insecure attachment style, this might point you in the general direction of recovery. We mentioned Daniel earlier, an individual largely struggling with an anxious attachment style. He was the military veteran who experienced abuse and neglect from a single mother. He loved his wife intensely and could be caring and attentive. However, his low self esteem, jealousy, and fears of abandonment led him to be controlling and invasive, and his behavior was creating a crisis in the marriage. Daniel's appreciation of an anxious attachment style helped him see that he would need to work on self esteem, develop skills for dealing with his insecurities in ways which would not undermine his marriage, and cope better with his feelings when he was separated from his wife. He also needed to appreciate that one person can't meet all his relationship needs, and that developing friendships outside his marriage was safe and healthy. We mentioned Alice earlier, the HR officer who had experienced emotional abuse and neglect before being placed into care. She had developed an avoidant attachment style in childhood, which she continued to rely on as an adult. Alice kept people at a distance, was overly self reliant, felt uncomfortable with intimacy, and was quite critical of others. Alice's avoidant attachment style seemed to protect her and prop up her sense of self, but she often felt depressed, lonely, and angry. Alice was coming to recognize that if she was going to create secure attachments, she would need to trust others more, let people know who she was, allow others to help her, and let others get close to her. She would have to be more vulnerable in relationships with the right people. She needed to realize that she just couldn't sort all her problems or soothe her emotions on her own. This was a scary insight for Alice because she had decided long ago that trusting and being vulnerable with others meant she was going to get hurt or abandoned. Recovery was going to require time, taking risks in developing relationships, and experimentation. And then there was Jerry, the young man with a disorganized attachment style who experienced severe and ongoing abuse as a child. He related to himself, others, and life in a largely confused, disconnected, or overwhelmed fashion. Crushingly low self esteem and intense fear of social situations meant he could only connect to others through gaming sites. The avoidant and anxious attachment styles can certainly be problematic, but at least they represent some strategy for staying safe and having control within relationships. Mary Ainsworth theorized that people with a disorganized attachment style may have experienced more extreme trauma and a complete lack of care, so attempts to form attachments are just disorganized or muddled. Individuals such as Jerry may require professional help for some time because they have little inner resources they can rely on to direct personal development. For Jerry, a lot of work will focus on rebuilding a damaged sense of self and slowly developing trust in others and the world. Daniel, Alice, and Jerry represent unique examples of how insecure attachment styles can express themselves. Your attachment style will get expressed somewhat differently. To further help you reflect on how your attachment style may help you understand personal development needs, we offer generic descriptions in Chart 3. Please pause the audio and review Chart 3 and then complete Exercise 3 in the guidebook. Final note. Attachment theory and the four attachment styles are not a perfect science. For example, some people who experienced childhood harm can quite clearly identify with one of the attachment styles, and the insight this offers can make things simpler. Others can recognize the value of considering secure and insecure attachment, but find it harder to identify clearly with a specific attachment style. If this is true for you, be aware that some research suggests certain people may not fit neatly into one attachment style. And some people we work with feel that, in addition to experiences of trauma, their inborn biological temperament plays an important role in their attachment difficulties. There is some research to support that this experience can also be true. However, despite the criticisms and ongoing debates, attachment theory has been going strong for over 70 years and is the predominant theory for explaining how childhood harm impacts child development and the patterns of relationship difficulty which can later emerge. This ends the audio recording for the chapter on seeking a secure attachment.